Okay, just imagine this for a second. You wake up one morning and you find out that the quiet, patriotic town you live in, the place you've called home for years, was secretly built for one single purpose: to create the most destructive weapon in human history. I mean, this was the actual reality for tens of thousands of Americans during World War II. So let's dive into how these secret cities of the atomic bomb were built and how they changed the world forever. On this day, the world changed forever. An American B-29 bomber dropped the very first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan. But for tens of thousands of Americans living in cities that didn't officially exist, well, this was the day their own secret was finally revealed to them and to everyone else. For the residents of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, this headline must have been a profound shock. They knew their work was for the war effort, sure, but they had no idea they were enriching uranium, basically preparing the raw material needed for an atomic bomb. The news brought this bizarre mix of pride and horror as they finally realized the true, devastating nature of their jobs. And that really is the central mystery, isn't it? How do you hide a project of this magnitude right in plain sight? It's an incredible story of secrecy, of architectural genius, and the collective effort of hundreds of thousands of people who only knew their one tiny piece of a giant, terrifying puzzle. To really get how these cities even came to be, we've got to go back to the very beginning of the war. You see, it wasn't a military plan at first. It was a single, terrifying fear that gripped the world's greatest scientific minds. The timeline here is just staggering. It all starts in 1938 when German scientists discover nuclear fission. The very next year, you have Albert Einstein warning President Roosevelt that the Nazis could be building an extremely powerful bomb. By 42, the United States is all in, a total commitment. And then, just 3 years after that, a scientific theory becomes a terrifying reality. And that mission had a name: the Manhattan Project. It was the most ambitious research and industrial project in history, combining military, scientific, and industrial power on a scale that had never been seen before. And it was all driven by that one fear: what happens if the enemy gets there first? So the project gets the green light. But now, the guy in charge, General Groves, he's facing this unbelievable logistical challenge. You can't build an atomic bomb in a college lab, right? You need massive industrial-scale facilities. And you need to build them where no one will find them. This is where the brilliant and kind of contradictory thinking comes in. The sites had to be hidden, way inland to avoid any enemy attack, but they also needed access to railroads for a constant flow of materials and people. And maybe most important, they needed huge amounts of electricity and water to power all these experimental processes. So 3 locations were chosen, and each one became a secret city with its own specific job. You had Oak Ridge in Tennessee for enriching uranium, one of the possible fuels for the bomb. Then there was Hanford in Washington for producing plutonium, a different type of fuel. And finally, Los Alamos, New Mexico. That was the brain of the operation, where the world's top scientists would actually design and build the thing. To really wrap your head around the sheer scale of this, let's take a closer look at Oak Ridge, also known as Site X. The government just quietly acquired nearly 60,000 acres of land, kicking about 1,000 families off their farms with little to no explanation. A whole city was about to rise up from absolutely nothing. And boy, did it rise. In just 3 years, the population of Oak Ridge exploded to 75,000 people. To put that in perspective, that made it the 5th largest city in the entire state of Tennessee at the time. And here's the crazy part, the central paradox of the whole thing. It was a bustling city. It had schools, theaters, grocery stores, but it was completely classified. If you tried to find it on a map, it just wasn't there. The whole reason for all this was these massive industrial facilities, especially the K-25 plant for uranium enrichment. This U-shaped behemoth covered over 1.6 million square feet. That's larger than the Pentagon, which was being built around the same time. It was a perfect example of what historians call industrial monumentality. Basically, architecture built on a scale that was just totally unprecedented. So what was it actually like to live in a city built for a single secret purpose? Well, it was a life defined by one overarching rule: silence. This slogan was everywhere, plastered on billboards all over these secret cities. It was a constant, inescapable reminder: your entire existence here was classified, and your silence, that was part of the war effort. And, this wasn't just a suggestion. It was strictly enforced. The whole city was fenced in with guarded gates, your mail was opened, your phone calls were monitored, and you could be fired just for talking about your job with your own spouse. The goal was to make absolutely sure no single person could piece together the full picture.
The secrecy even infected the language itself. Workers didn't talk about the atomic bomb, they called it the gadget. Oak Ridge was Site X. Uranium was tube alloy. It was a whole world of code words and euphemisms, all designed to hide the truth, even from the people who were building it.
The secret to pulling all this off was a concept called compartmentalization. So a young woman might spend her entire day watching dials and turning knobs at one of the plants in Oak Ridge, knowing only that if the needle went into the red, she had to adjust it. She had absolutely no idea she was separating uranium isotopes. The project was so enormous that a grand total of 600,000 people contributed, and most of them were in complete ignorance of the final product. For 3 long years, this immense, secret effort just churned on. And then, in the summer of 1945, the work of these hidden cities was finally put to the test. The gadget from Los Alamos was taken to a remote site out in the New Mexico desert. The test, codenamed Trinity, was a success. The explosion was so bright it was seen for hundreds of miles. And in that single flash of light, the atomic age was born. The work of the secret cities was now unleashed upon the world. Just 21 days later, Little Boy, the uranium bomb from Oak Ridge, was dropped on Hiroshima. 3 days after that, Fat Man, the plutonium bomb fueled by Hanford, fell on Nagasaki. Facing this unbelievable new power, Japan surrendered. World War II was over. But the project's success came at a staggering human cost. By the end of 1945, it's estimated that the 2 bombings claimed the lives of more than 150,000 people, and most of them were civilians. And this right here is the complex dual legacy the secret cities left behind. On one hand, the Manhattan Project created a whole new model for big science, leading to peacetime innovations that actually save lives. But on the other hand, it also unleashed the horror of nuclear weapons, sparking a Cold War that would define the next 50 years and ushering in an era of global anxiety that, we still live with to this day. The Manhattan Project stands as this monument to human ingenuity, organization, and sacrifice on an absolutely epic scale. I mean, the creation of these cities was an architectural and logistical marvel. These cities were built to end a war and create a safer world. They definitely succeeded in that first goal, but the second one, that remains the unanswered question of our time.